We're here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's January 30th here in Seoul. I'm Shin-Yun, and this is Arirang's new daily morning program, News Generation, where we make the news at Arirang's very own open studio. Every morning, we'll discuss the top issues and latest current affairs affecting people in their 20s and 30s. Joining me in the studio is Cheska Dain-hong.
Happy Monday morning, everyone.
Happy Monday, and Hak Ki-hoon.
Happy Monday!
Happy Monday!
I'm so happy.
So happy.
Yes, and both are here to speak on behalf of those in their 20s and 30s. Now, every day we'll make a news feed for the new generation, and we're looking at the top trending hashtags on social media over the past 24 hours. Here they are. The first hashtag is Jerusalem shooting. 7 people were killed in a deadly shooting at a synagogue in East Jerusalem on Friday. Just a day later, 2 were injured by a separate attack outside the Old City. The second hashtag is Czech Republic. Petr Pavel, a retired NATO general, has been elected as the 4th president of the Czech Republic. Pavel won in an election runoff on Saturday by getting 58.3% of votes. The third hashtag is Twitter files. Twitter files are collections of internal emails and chats between Twitter employees discussing company policies. Now, these files suggested that the company had intentionally muzzled conservatives because of their political views. Just 2 weeks before the House Oversight Committee is expected to hold hearings on this matter, Twitter CEO Elon Musk visited Capitol Hill to not only say, but also find ways to guarantee that Twitter is a fair platform for all political parties. And from today, we're going to look in depth at one of our 3 hashtags. Given the gravity of the situation, we've chosen the first one, which is hashtag Jerusalem shooting. Now, Cheska, how have Israeli and Palestinian tensions built up before the attack?
Yes, yeah. So prior to the attack, tensions have been flaring since Thursday when 9 Palestinians were killed by an Israeli military raid in the occupied West Bank. Now, that's 1 day before the synagogue attacked. This attack was then followed by rocket fire into Israel from Gaza. Israel responded to this with airstrikes.
I see. And Ki-hoon, if you could take us back to the day of the synagogue shooting, that'd be great.
Right, the synagogue shooting happened on Holocaust Memorial Day. This is a day commemorating the 6 million Jews and other victims killed in the Holocaust by Nazi Germany. On this day, people gathered for prayers at the start of the Jewish Sabbath. The gunman was shot dead at the scene. Here's what an eyewitness had to say.
Here it penetrated the window. If I was sitting here, I would have been dead.
Right, that was just an eyewitness who was at the day of the synagogue shooting. And in response to the 2 attacks, authorities have deployed officers from a counter-terrorism unit to permanently respond to any string of events. So we'll definitely have to see what's going to be happening. And that was our news feed for this Monday. Moving on, NewsGen discusses different topics each day. Here's what we have for you today.
Ever since the outbreak of COVID-19, people in South Korea have become so used to wearing masks that some even consider them fashion items, or even part of their identity. Some choose to wear masks outdoors, even though it's no longer required. Apart from health-related reasons, some of the younger generation like to because it helps them feel more secure about their appearance. Having said all that, starting this week, face mask mandates for most indoor public places have been dropped. Today, NewsGen looks at 3 questions. 1. What does the New Gen think about the indoor mask mandate being dropped? 2. What do they think are some of the pros and cons of wearing masks? 3. What does the younger generation in other countries think about mask mandates? Are their feelings similar to opinions in Korea in any way?
As we just saw, starting today, we'll no longer be required to wear masks indoors here in Korea. Until now, though we've had to wear them to stop the spread of the virus, it's now just highly recommended that we keep our masks on in very crowded places. And I would like to ask you both what you guys think about the lifting of these measures indoors. It's been 27 months since this happened.
Oh my goodness, I didn't even know that. I mean, I feel so glad that we came to this point, and I think all of us have been waiting very patiently for a step closer to a COVID-free world. And I'm very grateful for everyone that made us possible that we can have a step closer to being COVID-free. However, I think we must wear masks in certain locations, which is still a mandate. And I hope that this makes the day easier for younger children and elderly people who might have had trouble breathing through these masks. And for people like me who travel often, these mask regulations in different locations were kind of hard to keep up. I feel more liberated.
Right, it's much easier now.
Much easier, yes, to keep track, yeah.
What about you, Ki-hoon?
With me, I'm very happy and relieved because there's one less thing that I always have to remember before leaving my house, which was a mask, right? And also, I'm very glad to see people's faces and lovely expressions. Because I think communicating was very difficult with the mask on. So you had to repeat what you said, and you just had to purely depend on like hearing, right, to understand what the other person was saying. And of course, I personally had breathing difficulties especially with the KF mask on. So, but all in all, I'm looking forward to the freedom of not putting on and off my mask constantly throughout the day.
So I think excitement fills the air here in the studio. And because we've been wearing masks for quite a while now, mask wearing has become so normal. They've been a part of our new look in Korea. And because of that, a new term has popped up among the younger gen here, and it's called mask fishing. Now, I think you might be more familiar with the Korean term. It's called magikun.
Magikun.
Yeah, because it means you fish or attract someone while wearing a mask, but once you take it off, people are quite shocked because they had imagined something completely different. And Cheska, I hear this is actually based on scientific evidence.
Yes. So I just want to make something very clear here. And before we jump to label someone as magikun or feeling fished, we must understand that it's actually our own brains that are culprit, not the other party. And let me explain. So during the pandemic, there was a very interesting research done by researchers at Cardiff University on mask and human perception. So when we see covered faces, our brain automatically fills in that missing gap with its own imagination.
I see.
It can be sometimes a little bit more creative and exaggerated than the reality.
Right.
So if you think about it, the brain is like an artist and it has an empty canvas and it's just exercising its complete artistic freedom.
Right.
I mean, how could you blame anyone for that really, right? And also another interesting plot twist is prior to COVID, if you wore a mask, it was considered a contamination cue. Right, meaning someone to be avoided, to keep your distance. However, post-COVID, apparently wearing mask, especially surgical mask, elevates your attractiveness.
That's so interesting.
It's so fascinating, isn't it? Because in both circumstances, the only thing that has changed is our perception and how we label things.
So it's all coming down to perception and labels. And speaking of labels, Ki-hoon, have you ever heard about this label or term?
Yeah, and before answering your question, I have an experiment that I want to do with everyone. Do I look like a magikun?
Wait, Ki-hoon, can you put your hands, cover up a little bit? So attractive.
How far is the mask going up?
Did you hear that from Joe? So attractive. Is this attractive? Are you kidding me?
Maybe cover up the lower half.
Like this? Anyway, I'm so hurt.
You are attractive. Those levels just went.
All right. Anyway,
I love you.
I love you too. I heard this expression from the students that I taught English. They first told me about this term. They were like, "Teacher, are you a magikun?" And I thought, I don't know. You can decide. So, and adding to what Cheska was saying about filling the gaps with our brains, like through our imagination, I once had to teach these kids online. And I was quite surprised to see their whole faces because it didn't quite match the faces that I imagined them to be.
Right, your expectations.
Yeah, so, but it was just for that moment. But after that, I got used to it. But going back to the term magikun, these new trending words are coming in and coming out. And I don't think people should be too offended by how people are trying to, tie down people into different groups. And like just two groups, right? Magikun and maeda. So just take it lightly as a fun and entertainment source. And try not to take it to heart, okay?
Right, and that's a good point because apart from appearance, were there any moments where you thought it was much more comfortable to be just wearing a mask?
Definitely. The biggest advantage was I didn't have to shave every day.
I see.
Because you guys probably wouldn't understand, but for the viewers out there who are men, I have facial hair that grows really fast like me. I didn't have to shave on a daily basis. So
you did shave for the show, right? Just
yes, because I have to look beautiful. But in saying that, now that we don't have to wear our masks anymore, it's not it's not mandatory. I think I should take a little more care on my appearance, which could, in turn leave a better impression to other people. But, all in all, I'm just glad that the world is heading towards an endemic.
That's a definitely good point. And there's also another term popular among the younger generation. It's quite the opposite of magikun. It's called 마해자, a combination of the word mask and victim, meaning people who get the shorter end of the stick by wearing a mask because it decreases their attractiveness level.
Oh, that's me.
So you're
sorry, I'm the
Maheta.
Maheta. I'm not
Sorry,
the
can you
Mahekun.
cover your face up again?
I was the
Can you
Maheta.
let my brain have its
Maheta.
This is a topic we'll talk about later after the show. But Cheska, apart from appearance, what are some drawbacks of wearing masks?
So apparently there were some unforeseen and unfortunate consequences to wearing masks. So to give a personal example, I have a friend who has hearing disabilities, and for her, communication was incredibly difficult because she could not hear better or even read lips because of the mask. And it was very similar with elderly people too.
Right.
And especially young children, very young children who are, learning to read facial expressions, they were having trouble with emotional literacy. And on top of that, there was an article that was published that a lot of teenagers in school are afraid to take their mask off because they're traumatized to being labeled as such. And it actually affects how they interact in school, and the labels that we put on them has affected how they interact in society.
Right, definitely. And I think that's why we should be hearing from a millennial living abroad about what he thinks about these terms and just about mask mandates overall. As we mentioned, we're now going to use this time to hear from a global millennial. We have with us on Skype a flight attendant from Belgium, Jonah D. Strooper, who's been around the world and experienced different mask-wearing rules. Great to have you here with us, Jonah.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Now, we talked about the pros and cons of wearing masks and how in Korea there's terms like 마해자, meaning mask victim, and magikun, meaning mask fishing. Do you have any thoughts on this?
I think it's very interesting because actually this is the first time I've heard about that. It's completely different here in Europe. I've never heard about the terms, but I do understand both sides actually. Especially the one where you can feel a little bit more secure because you're not showing your face properly, you're hiding a little bit, you are a little bit more anonymous. So that's something I can understand in certain situations. It might give people some comfort. And I do understand that it brings down your attractiveness as well. I can understand that as well, from a personal perspective.
I see. All right, but any questions you two might want to ask Jonah yourself?
So Jonah, as a flight attendant, you must have visited a lot of different countries and followed the COVID-19 regulations, including masks. So what was it like for you and your cabin crew when traveling in South Korea compared to other countries?
It was a challenge, I must say, due to the constantly changing rules, when you need to wear a mask, where you need to wear a mask, which type of mask you need to be wearing. Is it just like the surgical one or the FFP2 mask? Do we need to wear goggles? There's been quite a challenge also for the company to keep it like updated for us before the flights. And in the beginning, it wasn't that hard because here in Europe, we also had a mask mandate. So it was very part of our daily routine to just like go out and have your face mask on. But when it got lifted in Europe, and especially when flying to Asian countries like South Korea, where it was still very, very much like mandatory to wear your mask, it's a little click you need to make in your head. So sometimes they're like, oh, I forgot my mask, or like you guys were saying earlier, like, now I don't have to think about when I go out, like to grab my mask. But that's what we have sometimes when we arrive in hotels or countries. And it's like, oh, a mask. Oh yeah, I don't have one. So yeah.
Okay, one last question is, are there any other countries that had mask mandates like Korea and where most population follow the rules? And also, how was it like in Belgium?
In the world mostly was in Asia, like Asian countries or like Singapore or Malaysia. And I was always very surprised like how people follow these mask mandates like very rigorously. In Europe, we're a bit more rebellious in it, I think, and sometimes people were like, oh, I'm not wearing a mask because there's no one around me. But especially in South Korea, everybody's wearing their mask and respecting every rule. So that was an eye-opener. Yeah. And in Belgium, it has been lifted for such a long time. I can't even remember. I do feel the joy. So I know how you guys feel right now as of today. Like, okay, this is freedom, no more mask. And was a bit weird in the beginning because you have to shave again. The girls need to wear makeup again, like full makeup, not only the eyes.
Jonah understands. Right?
Jonah understands.
Thank you,
He
Jonah.
understands.
But for here, like actually today, nobody even thinks of masks anymore. It's like, it's so distant again.
Right.
Like, yeah, we've
Right,
gone
so-
completely back to normal.
So it took some time for you guys to reel in and get adjusted, but you returned to normal.
Yes, completely. Completely.
All right. All right. Thank you so much, Jonah. It was a pleasure to have you here with us.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, if we bring the discussion back to the studio, any points of Jonah that fascinated you?
Definitely the comment he made about how those terms seems to be very exclusive to South Korea. Because he mentioned that in Europe, he has never heard of such terms
Right.
before. And it's almost as they don't even perceive,
Right.
you know, people with wearing masks as, you know, between these two groups. So for me, that was the most fascinating aspect. And I think it sheds a light on a part of our culture as well.
Definitely. What about you, Ki-hoon?
Right, just like what Cheska said, we see a big, cultural difference, but I think we're following suit. And now that, what Jonah said, what is a mask? They just moved on. And I think we should do the same because
Definitely.
to find a new normal.
Yes.
We're finding a new normal by taking a big step. All right, given that we are a live morning program, we always ask our viewers questions related to our discussion topic in advance, and we use this time to share with you what they had to say. If you take a look at the screen, we asked what some of the pros and cons are to wearing masks, and Kuro Ema Nikolai said, because of the mask, my glasses would get foggy, especially outdoors. I feel you. As a glasses wearer myself, I agree. Terry Kong said the good thing about wearing a mask is that it gave people some sort of privacy and protection when going out. Benny said, about being maskless, I can be free and have a chance to see others' faces, interact more, and breathe freely. Now, these are the comments from our viewers. Very briefly, Cheska, what did you think about them?
I definitely love Benny's comment. Hi, Benny. About being able to breathe freely and see people's faces. I love seeing people's faces and expressions when I'm talking to them. I definitely feel more intimate and close. So for me, being able to communicate with people without masks is a big deal for me, yeah.
Definitely. What about you, Ki-hoon?
The first comment, I don't personally wear glasses anymore, but I used to. So I know how it feels to have your glasses fogged up. And when I saw people with glasses fogging up, I really didn't know where to look at. I mean,
There's nowhere to look at.
nowhere
them
to
then.
look at. So I was just like looking up, down.
Do you know how hard it is to
I
breathe
know how
through the
hard it would
nose?
have felt. I fully feel
Right.
you guys.
It's like
Yeah.
scuba diving.
Exactly. And I can agree to Terry Kong, who said it gave people some sort of privacy and protection by wearing masks. I feel that way now too. Sometimes I feel uncomfortable taking my mask
Right.
off because I feel so protected. All right, let's wrap up our viewers' comments for now. Every day we upload questions related to our discussion topic for our viewers to answer. And if you want to participate, please search Arirang News on YouTube and look into our community tab. The link is right below. Now, we've already come to the final part of our discussion for today.
Really?
We have.
That flew really fast.
It does. It always does with you guys. Now, Ki-hoon, now that mask wearing is no longer necessary indoors, well, most indoors, will you still carry around a mask?
Yes and no, because I would carry one and wear it indoors for safety and health issues. And of course, if I was feeling a little sick, I would definitely wear one,
Right.
even outdoors. But on a regular basis, I don't think I'll be wearing one anymore because now that I have the freedom, I was always I felt very stuffy inside the
Right.
mask. And, I think, but in saying this, we've been wearing a mask every single day for the past almost 3 years, right?
Right.
So I think I would always have one in my bag just in case of emergency, right?
Right. Yes.
Because you don't know when you're going to take public transport here in Korea.
Right,
Yeah.
and it's so habitual now.
Right, it is.
And Cheska, what are your thoughts on the terms we discussed today, 마기꾼 and 마혜자, and the effect they may have had on our society?
So because we discussed some terms used in our society, there's a quote that I live by, and it goes, our words shape our world. And even though these terms may seem casual and slight, I think they shine a light on a part of our society and culture where we label people based on appearances. And it pains me to see that there are teenagers and people who are affected by these terms. And it is not the mask, but it's how we label them that has led us to this point, right? So I really hope that we take more responsibility and really kindness to labeling people based on appearances, because it is such a small fraction of a person. And if anything, I think the Little Prince quote that says, what is essential is always invisible to the eye is a standing truth. And I really hope that we cherish and protect what is essential in our lives. Yeah.
We definitely should. And just for a clarification for our viewers that watch today's program, today we talked about how the younger generation feels about mask wearing. We weren't talking about whether we should or shouldn't wear masks.
Absolutely.
There are obviously, as health officials have been emphasizing for so long, the need to wear them to stop the spread of the virus. And as you mentioned, Cheska, there are labels like this trending, but we are not supporting them or saying we should follow this standard.
Don't judge a book by its cover.
Don't judge a book by its cover. Just know
don't cover your
don't cover
on my looks.
Exactly. So wrapping up today's discussion, today we talked about how the younger generation views mask wearing. And we'll be here every day from 9:30 a.m. to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you the topics that young people are talking about. Special thanks to Cheska Dain-hong.
Always a pleasure, and happy Monday, everyone!
Happy Monday! And Park Ki-hoon.
Thank you for having me.
All right, thank you. And thank you everyone for watching. We'll all see you tomorrow. We are News Generation.